Blake, have you ever stepped foot inside the state of Oklahoma?
Toby, how can you step in a flyover state?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is afraid to fly, and thus I can't visit any state that doesn't share a border with Tennessee. And I'm here with my co-host, who is a nation-renowned nation trotter, Toby Walters.
That is a mouthful. A nation-renowned nation trotter.
Well, because you're not a globe trotter, but you are a nation trotter. I mean, you get around.
And usually be world renowned, but I'm just nation renowned. Nobody outside of our nation has heard of us.
Well, you're not visiting churches in other countries, are you?
And you do know that you can drive through a state that borders Tennessee and then get to other states that don't border Tennessee.
Toby, that would require a lot of hours. You know, you don't give me any days off here. How would I ever make it there?
It's a good point. Can you not work while you drive? I mean, what
Toby,
do you even do around here,
That kills
Blake?
people, Toby. That kills people.
So I used to live in Austin for 6 years, and Oklahoma was like the arch nemesis to...
Oh, really? For sports?
Yeah, for UT, University of Texas. So Texas and Oklahoma are rivals. And then every year they'd have the Red River rivalry game.
Is that because the river's going to flow with blood?
No, it's because the Red River is in Austin and essentially like divides the territory, I think is, the unofficial way they say it. It's called the Red River rivalry. And of course, we all love alliteration, just like your nation trotter thing. I don't know, that was a terrible alliteration, but
It was a bad reverse segue.
yeah. So Oklahoma was the rival, and so I spent a lot of time in Texas. And Blake, I don't know if you know this, there are ridiculous amounts of large churches in Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, including the churches and the amount of them.
Oh, I'll never forget the trip you and I did when you'd planned way too much for yourself, and I was like, "You need some help, bud?" You were like, "Yes," and then there was so many churches there.
And then Oklahoma's just right next door, right above, but it is a much, much lower populated state. But still, there are some of the most, like the biggest church in the nation is located in Oklahoma. It's the Life Church. And then there are some other just massively influential churches, Transformation, and then Church on the Move, which we are getting the distinct pleasure of talking with Pastor Whit George and Johnathan Basquez, who we love, just talking about their relationship and just the legacy that has been there from Willie George, the founding pastor, and then Andrew Stone, who is the production director there, who is like one of the most iconic guys in church production. He kind of like paved the way for things that are happening today.
Big shoes to fill.
Definitely. So it's really fun to, talk to two guys that have taken over the legacy of such legends in the church world and then are still doing amazing things at Church on the Move. So to carry that legacy, but also kind of, a rich history and high expectations of what has been done before them.
Yes, I would not want to be in their shoes. That's why I took this job, because there wasn't anybody doing it before me. There's no pressure over here.
Yeah, it's like Church Gear isn't filling anybody's previous shoes. Like, we're making it up as we go. What's an incredibly renowned thing that would be hilarious to say that we had to fill the shoes of?
The Vatican.
The Vatican, perfect. Jesus.
I don't think those two are that related. But speaking of two people that are related, let's get to Johnathan and Whit's episode. Introducing the production director, Johnathan Basquez, and the lead pastor, Whit George of Church on the Move. Y'all, welcome to the series today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, honored to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So, Pastor Whit, I've got to ask before I forget, are those like standard issue lead pastor frames these days?
I have no idea. They just help me see. I stopped being able to see so good like a couple of years ago. So, particularly reading.
I feel like, you search for, some of the greatest teachers right now and their messages, and you see just good looking dudes in the clear frames like those. And so I think you're trending, man.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I tried a lot of different ones. These are the ones that look best in my face. That's the short answer.
Yeah.
Toby, I tried some clear frames from Warby Parker, and my wife rejected them. So I guess I'm not destined to be a pastor.
I mean, look at Whit's face versus your face, and then you understand why that didn't work, Blake.
It makes total sense.
Yeah. So we are jumping straight into 5 truths and a lie. And it looks like Johnathan couldn't quite count. So we have 4 truths and a lie, apparently.
Unless Johnathan said, I will not lie to my pastor. And all 5
that
are
would
true.
be a smart move. So Johnathan created a list of potential truths and lies that Pastor Whit, you have to decide which one of these is the lie. So Blake, read the list for us.
Number 1, we have 275 production volunteers across 3 churches. Every production person kind of hopes that's a lie because they'd be so jealous. I mean, that's a giant team.
That's an army.
Number 2, when I chopped off part of my finger, I was more afraid to lose a mixing finger than my finger.
That's a dedicated tech right there.
Number 3, barbecue and black coffee are a production staple. Okay. He's testing his pastor's understanding of the subculture of production.
Yep.
Number 4, I have Whit on Find My Friends just for those Sundays when he's cutting it a little close on time. Can I get you, Toby, on Find My Friends?
I'm just wondering the philosophical position of a pastor to just, his staff can find him at any time.
Hey, that's transparency right there.
That is, but maybe he doesn't want to be found because he's, communing with the Lord.
Are we still talking about the pastor, Toby? Or are we talking about you? Number 5, during COVID, we robbed every office of furniture to help with the set and maybe even some snacks.
So I know that I'm on his Find My Friends. I started that a long time ago, just so that they wouldn't worry, because sometimes I show up later than I should. I'm going with the finger being chopped off is my guess. It sounds like that could be true. I don't know about I mean, I think that I would think that the volunteer thing is true. I know the Find My Friends thing is true. Barbecue and black coffee. I mean, I that sounds about right. I know that Tom Dorner, one of our prod guys, is a barbecue boss. So I'm going with chopped off his finger is the right one.
I'm going to piggyback Toby and jump on the chopped finger as well.
See, I've never heard of a mixing finger, and I used to mix a fair bit.
You weren't doing it well, apparently.
I'm gonna say that they did not rob every office of furniture during COVID. I'm gonna say that Jonathan's gonna go ahead and say that he did not rob Pastor Whit's office.
See, Toby,
I don't have an office. So that would be.
If you had listened,
yeah, I know we used a lot of furniture during COVID.
We did.
I think every is probably a little bit of a push or an embellishment, but yeah, we had a lot of furniture out there.
Toby, if you had listened to Jonathan's episode with us, you'd remember that he said this. I'm pretty sure, Jonathan.
It's a lot of work carrying you, Blake. So sometimes I miss the point.
That's how you get your bicep workout in. All right, Jonathan, we're locked in. What is the lie?
It's Find My Friends.
Oh my gosh, Andrew had it.
He had it. You said, "Hey, do you want me to send that to you?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm fine. You just shoot me a text, and I'll find out."
Wow,
well, it was my intention to give you. Then that's a dirty one there.
That's a tech that trusts his pastor. Way to go, Jonathan. Yeah. I feel like this whole episode is you angling for a raise. So we're gonna work on it for you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you text me every Sunday when you're coming in. So yeah, I don't need it.
Okay, all right, good.
If not, Chris can get on stage and start preaching.
And Jonathan, tell us about this finger incident.
Yeah, so like it was the day after Thanksgiving, I chopped it off with a saw, part of it, and I was going into the weekend, and that was my first thing was like, oh man, this is one of my fingers that I mix with prominently because it was on my left side, and I was like, dang it. Like that was the first thing that came to my head. My wife reminded me of that last night. She was like, yeah, you were pretty confused of like what you were going to do to mix that. So, yeah.
Wow. Pastor Whit, do you have a preaching finger?
No, I don't.
What if you're like, you're clicking the slides on what? Jonathan, I'm blanking on the name of the program that you put slides up with.
ProPresenter?
ProPresenter. Yeah, and maybe you need that little clicker finger.
Well, Whit has his own teaching TV where he has a touch screen and he can move along. on his own slides. So we don't use ProPresenter anymore.
This is
for
fancy.
his slides. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So, guys, you're both at Church on the Move in Oklahoma, and Church on the Move has such an incredible legacy when it comes to the arts. And there's a couple legends that preceded you guys. Both, Andrew Stone in the production world was, pivotal in what's happening today in church ministry. And then Whit, your dad, Pastor Willie. So for both of you, kind of give us a quick snapshot of your backgrounds coming up under those guys, and what you were doing that was so influential, even, just a few years back.
You want to go first, JB? Go for it.
Yeah. So going under, working for Andrew for, I guess, it feels weird, but it was 8 years. That was a pivotal time. I was just 18 out of high school and thought I knew a lot about production. Then I come to Church on the Move, and I don't know anything about production. I remember Andrew, the first day he said, as an intern, he was like, forget everything that you were taught and you're going to learn the right way. And that was a hard thing for me to swallow, because I was like, I've been doing this for 10 years, growing up through church at a large church, that I was like, oh man, I know a lot coming in. He was like, nah, just forget it, leave it at the door and walk away. And that's what I did. And yeah, those years were pivotal to me as a mix engineer, but also just growing as a leader. But on top of that, just being in close proximity with him, I don't take that as a thing of the past. It was definitely a monumental statement in my life, and it will continue to be. I know a lot of people didn't get to work around him as closely or know him as personally as I got to. But yeah.
Yeah, so I started working at Church on the Move right out of high school. That was 1994. I didn't have any plans to become the senior pastor. I don't think my dad did either. So just took an opportunity there because I didn't know exactly what else I was going to do. And kind of quickly moved into it. At the time, my dad was still doing quite a bit of TV production. If you go way back in my dad's kind of early career, there was Gospelville way back there, but a few other shows and different things like that. And so I had some proclivity, I guess, in that area. And that's where I got placed, bottom level, doing, different kind of production work, but production work to some degree. When you're setting up film shoots and whatnot, moving lights from here to there, operating cameras, cables, that kind of stuff is a lot of what I did. I was a grip. And then kind of moved over into graphic design, which became a passion of mine. My wife says she thought she was marrying a graphic designer, didn't intend to marry a pastor. Did that for a lot of years, was a musician in that time period, got to become or do some kind of filmmaking projects. So had a lot of I guess you could say like a pretty varied experience, which ended up being really useful for part of my career, which began in 2005 when Andrew came, and Andy Christman as well as our worship pastor. So those guys, I was basically the lead of that whole, we merged arts, worship, production, all of it into one big thing. And for about a decade of Church on the Move's history, the arts team kind of ran the church. I mean, not everything we did, but a lot of it was kind of run out of one team. When you're kind of put together like that, it's amazing what you can accomplish. But it was just a different era. We run completely differently today. A lot of that's changed, but it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience to be a part of. We put together a lot of, I think, interesting things that I'm still proud of. We don't do the kinds of stuff that we used to do anymore for various reasons, but that was a special era, and I was really glad to be a part of it and getting to work with some of the most honestly talented people I think you could find anywhere, church or otherwise. And that was really something special. But then in 2014, my dad and I began talking pastoral transition. And by 2017, 3 years later, I stepped in as the senior pastor at Church on the Move. So I guess that's 7 years ago, going on this July. So I've been working there for, I think 24 makes 30 years on staff at Church on the Move.
Okay. So when I Google Church on the Move, one of the first results that pops up is Church on the Move Seeds Conference. And I know you talked about kind of that season with you and Andy and Andrew, and just, you guys were cutting edge for the creative movement in the American church. And so, how is it today with Church on the Move? Like, how is the mission maybe different, but you're carrying on some of those same DNA into your processes?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's a great question. So yeah, I mean, a lot of functionally, much has changed. Some things are the same. So so essentially kind of, and I'm trying to catch everything that you wanted to talk about there, but Seeds Conference, we did from I think 2011 was the first year we did it. And I think maybe we stopped in 2017 or 2015 or something. I don't remember.
2017.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Notifications on here. Anyway, so it was a really cool season. I think what's changed is that we don't, in that era, I guess you could call us more of an attractional church. So the kind of mindset was we're doing things that would engage people, pique their interest, but also we were never satisfied in just getting people's attention. And this is what hasn't changed. I think the difference, I think the reason why a lot of church art sucks is because it is primarily about it's real surface level. There's not much depth to it. And I get it. There's not usually a lot of time or team to be able to achieve those things. It's not as much about access to equipment, I think, as it is about telling the truth when you're creating something. And the best art is reflective of what's happening in the human soul and reality. And so doing something, whether it's a spectacle or funny or whatever it might be, you're trying to speak to deeper feelings, and that part of us hasn't changed. The drive for authenticity. No longer are we doing a sketch or a comedy bit or some interesting song in a service. We rarely do that kind of thing anymore. Just because my convictions on what the church is and what our purpose is have shifted. I do not regret what we did at the time we did it. It's just not who we are, and I don't think it's who Church on the Move. This is not a judgment on every church, just who Church on the Move is meant to be into going into the future. Additionally, just sometimes you just we just had a collection of people there at that time that were just honestly some world-class talent. Andrew being one of those, but there were several others. And so you just that was there for that season. And then, obviously Andrew passed, and, people change, the seasons end and people move into different things, and you can't keep the good old days forever, and things have a life cycle. And so rather than trying to live in the glory of the past by just continuing to do what we'd always done, I think the right thing and the wise thing was to have a funeral and mourn, which we did do, and that was harder than I thought it would be, and then embrace where God is leading us now, and that's what we've been doing. So hopefully, if you want more detail on that, I'm happy to answer, but that's my perspective.
And something you said triggered another question in me. I think there are churches out there almost doing production for production's sake. We got more money and more flash, and let's make it bigger and bigger and bigger. What are there specific churches that you find you just keep going back to as far as they're influencing me because they're thinking about art and presentation and production in a way that I want to, draw from?
I mean, this is going to sound arrogant, but no, I really don't look at the church world that much. I try not to listen to worship music if I can. I don't like. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, I'm into worship when we're at church, but I just am not. I just don't care really what's happening in the church world all that much, and that's not to say, like on that front, on the arts front, it's not terribly interesting to me. What I am more interested in is, as a pastor these days, is more of just like, if there is effective ministry happening somewhere or whatever, and there's a lesson that can be learned that would be applicable to what we're dealing with, then absolutely. But for the most part, I just don't pay too much attention to any of that stuff. But I think your point is well taken, and I think this is exactly right. Churches are famous for this. I would have been guilty of this too. Is we maybe perhaps we have all been in auditoriums that aren't big enough to justify IMAG, and yet there it is. It's like I can plainly see the speaker, right, like the guy pastor communicating right there. Why do I need a screen or a bad light show? I just don't understand why we think we need these things. But I guess because we see every other church doing it, and I think part of telling the truth is admitting where you are, who you are, what's happening right there. I remember, going to a church plant of a friend years ago, and it was like he's rented out a theater, and it's like we're trying to put on a mediocre Christian show at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, hoping people will just walk in off the street and go, "Wow, this is fantastic." I'm like, that's not why people come to church anyway. They don't come in and go, "Man, the music's really good here. I think I'll stay." It doesn't mean that the music has nothing to do with it. It's not a performance that we're trying to put on so we can impress enough people that they'll, leave the church that they're at to come to ours. It's generally, genuinely meant to be like an offering or a sacrifice of praise. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I got several thoughts on this, but I think it's part of what is broken in the American church is that we're more concerned with the icing on the cake than the cake itself.
I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most lead pastors are visionaries. It's the way God created them. I get it. There's never been an idea that I couldn't come up with and visualize in my head and then just try and instill it in my people I've got this great idea, let's carry it out. But most lead pastors aren't building lighting scenes and reconfiguring LED walls and making sets. What would you say, like, visionary pastors need to understand about the cost of the production on their people and on their budget to actually carry these things out?
Oh man, you're going to get me in a lot of trouble. Well, I think that in my experience, pastors complain about their people a lot. And usually I come away from the conversation thinking you're the problem, because you can't hire, like the goal is to hire competent people and then get out of their way and trust them. Like, you give anybody that's good at what they do, you don't have to give super specific, direction. And so, I think, I get it. You can run a church however you want. The whole, calling, Jonathan can attest to this. The whole, like, calling up on Friday night. We do services on Saturday or even Saturday morning. Hey, I need this prop built, or I need you, let's change the stage around, or hey, what if we did, this song instead of this song? And I have technically the authority to make those kinds of requests and actually demands. I think JB could probably tell you. I don't know. Has that ever happened, Jonathan?
It hasn't happened after 2020. Before that, okay. That was we've done some things that was last minute, and we would have to figure it out on the fly. But that's a contribute to you. Like, the last 5 years haven't been like that, or 4 years hasn't been like that. It's been very, hey, you sit in our weekend planning meetings, what's happening, what we're doing. And of course, on Saturday nights, we might have some tweaks to adjust. Oh, the song didn't actually land the way we wanted it to. Let's adjust that, but it's not a huge lift like it used to be. Also, that's just the way we're running production now. This past weekend, we had 21 volunteers and one staff member actually operating everything in our
Awesome, Jonathan.
room. And we're doing it simplified. I mean, we still have a big room, lots of equipment to make it work. The technology doesn't go away, but we're just finding better ways to be more fluent in changes, so it's not a massive production to swap on the fly.
And Whit, do you ever find yourself having to shrink your vision in your head because you know that, oh no, I've gone too far and, you know, I'm going to ask too much of the people that support me, and having to just reimagine that in a smaller version?
Not really. I mean, I'm probably not the visionary pastor that you're describing. I've done the arts world thing. Generally, I'm just showing up at church each weekend, wanting to make sure that the songs that we sing resonate with me, that we sound pretty good, that there's nothing clunky or I guess obviously wrong or could be made better. But as JB will attest, I don't plan Christmas nor Easter. I don't create openers or determine, let's make a video about this or that. I really have nothing to do with any of that. I'm aware of it. I might speak into it. I might see a rough of something and say, maybe but my primary concern is not, has more to do with whether or not it's hitting the intent of what we want to say that weekend. But really, I mean, very little. We just don't operate that way anymore. So it's not like, let's do a massive Christmas and I'll set aside some time and we'll come together and I've got this idea for a sketch or an opener or a moment or any of that. I don't really do any of that anymore.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say for you guys and for Church on the Move that the mission is partially, at least, let's not do so much that it becomes a distraction to the mission, and what we do, let's do it with excellence so it doesn't become a distraction to the mission?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you say that, JB? Do you think that describes it pretty well?
I do. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is we're not trying to draw away from what's being done on the stage. I sat in the audience probably 7 years ago, sat in the audience. I just transitioned into the production role, and I got hit in the face several times with lights, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is distracting. It takes me away from actually worshiping because I have however many lumens hitting me in the face with lights, and it's consistent every time. And honestly, I had a couple of people in the last couple of months that have reached out and said, hey, you guys transitioning, that has really changed my experience with worship, because I'm not able to, or I'm not being annoyed by a light hitting me. I can actually worship in that experience. But yeah, production is there to support what's happening on stage, not to be the show of the stage.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really well said.
Yeah. Whit, I know that that pastors and lead pastors, like, you have incredible weights on your shoulders. You are leading a congregation, you are preaching the word on Sunday mornings, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming to be like, okay, I have to thank every single one of my staff members at the same time. What, word of encouragement or advice could you give to other pastors out there of just, simple ways to love your production people well, specifically those people that so often get overlooked unless things go wrong?
Yeah, what I'm going to say is do a little bit of work to understand their world, understand what it takes that they put into it. And the more you can respect that, I think, pats on the back are great, but I think actually learning, what am I doing that's making your life a lot harder, and adjusting that is probably the best thanks you can give someone, because you're actually seeing them instead of just, verbally appreciating them. And so I think, just knowing what they go through, or even, like, how are there things that I'm doing that is making, like, your life or your team's life so much harder, because they really do. I mean, they work to serve behind the scenes everybody else, But if there are simple things as a leader that I can do that can streamline their, if it's as simple as, hey man, every time, you turn your slides in, just an hour late, here's the downstream ripple effect of that or whatever. It's like, okay, I will fix that. So I think those are ways that, just understanding what they do and trying to accommodate. I think that's part of, to me, that's the Jesus model of leadership, which is serving those that you lead. And so, I think that would probably make a big difference.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to that, Toby, is a lot of production guys fall into two ditches: being yes men or being no men. And saying no without giving any context to why we're saying no. Like Whit said, like giving him the full picture of, hey, this takes a plethora of volunteers to make your slides happen. And also this is the systems it has to go through to make sure your slides actually work on stage. So when you get there, everything's dialed in. Him knowing that gives him all of the context in the world to go, oh yeah, if I'm going to be late, one, I'm going to probably let him know, hey, this is what's up. I need to adjust my slides and I'll be in a little bit late. That prepares me. But also as a production guy, it's just giving people information. And I know there's a notion behind that because a lot of guys go, well, if I give them the information, then they know how to get around it. It's not that. That's also building some community and building bridges where sometimes we just destroy them by saying no and walking away. There's a lot of context that goes behind the scenes of working to build relationships.
And I feel like I should insert a disclaimer right here for all of our listeners. Do not passive aggressively send this portion of the episode to your pastor as a wink, wink. Can you turn your slides in? That won't go well for you. But Jonathan, can you give us some words of wisdom of how production people can love their pastor well and serve their pastor well?
Yeah. For me, it comes naturally. I just want to serve people, and being by their side, helping them learn what's going on behind the scenes. That's been the biggest thing in the last year I've been trying to really do, is let the leadership know what's actually happening. Sometimes behind the scenes, we just get lost in, oh, we just got to make it happen, instead of, oh, these are the things that are making all of your items happen in a weekend. That knowledge and just understanding that I'm giving them helps them to understand, oh, this person's really helping me. The 275 volunteers that help between all of our three churches, like that's a big thing to go, hey, there's a lot of people helping to serve you and love on you in different ways that, oh, some pastors would just show up probably and think, oh, this just happened. Well, no, there's a lot that goes behind it, but giving them that context, and also just supporting them. I'm there as a support. I'm not there to be a named person to go, oh, Jonathan has the best production group in the world. Yeah, if that ever happened, great. I love it. And I do have some of the top volunteers in the world, but I'm here just to serve alongside our pastors at all of our locations, and even people that are pastoring on mid-sized groups, kids ministries. There's a lot of pastors that we're serving besides just the lead pastors that we have to love and honor in those areas.
And this isn't on the outline, but I'll throw you a curveball here. Is it that, in my mind, the two of you put on the Beach Boys and you're out on the seesaw and playing tetherball together and you're best buds? Or are there moments where ministry gets tense and you guys have to, dissolve a little conflict between your visions coming together?
I'm trying to think through that.
Tough one to put you on the hot seat for, I must say, Toby.
You're
not
welcome.
On the outline or anything.
And we can always cut it. See, that's the great thing about production.
That's why we're vamping right now.
Cut it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever had a tense point yet, Whit. Yeah. No, when we switch vision from, hey, we were changing our production experience at the time, being less flashy, being more concentrated on what's actually being spoken and worship from the stage and not being so much of a show and an experience. That one took me for a curveball, but it was really trust. Trust was the big thing that I just had to lean into, going, hey, Whit's the pastor? He knows where we're going. I trust and believe that he's hearing from God, and this is the path that we need to take. But that was a hard season for me just to swallow, because I just got the reins as production director and going, oh man, I'm gonna get to do all this cool things. And I mean, what probably 8 months after that, we hit COVID. Direction of the church started to change, and that was a hard pill to swallow. But I mean, that was also probably the most freeing after that 8 months of just figuring out what we were doing. That was probably the most freeing part of my job, was going, oh, this is where we're going. Whether I love it, hate it, whatever, I'm going to follow my pastor and really support him along this way.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think we've never had any kind of tense moment. It's been, JB's awesome, as you can tell. I mean, the guy just, he was great from day one. I remember interviewing him from when he came in from New Mexico as an intern, and Andrew loved him, and we do too. He serves really, really well, and that's the kind of thing that you're looking for, is somebody that says, "Hey, look, I trust you. I may not understand it, but I trust you." And I think that's why he's done as well as he has.
Blake, maybe we can, find out. We'll do a follow-up episode to see if they have any tense moments after this.
JB's actually texting me right now. I'm not going to broadcast that, but
Jonathan, back to you. How involved are you and your team, specifically production, in service planning? Do you get to be part of crafting the vision, or is it more like, hey, here's the marching orders, carry it out?
Yeah, so I'm involved with the worship planning meetings that we have on Tuesdays. But I'm letting the worship pastors really decide what's happening. I'll speak up when I need to. If their vision gets a little too far and we can't accommodate that. But other than that, I'm letting the worship pastors decide that, and also working alongside them and serving them to understand what we can and can't do, and how we can modify some of these dreams that may come up. But also, like Thursday nights, so tonight we have rehearsal. That's more so when my speaking into the process really helps. Just, hey, where are we going? Where me and the worship pastors will meet up and just go, hey, this is our vision. This is where we want to go. And then through the rehearsal night, sometimes that morphs and changes, and I'm able to speak into that. But overall, I'm just working alongside these guys and worship and in worship to make sure that their vision is also carried out too.
And Whit, bit of a loaded question back to you. How involved do you feel like production should be in the planning of services?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that depends on the person and the personality. I think we should treat production team members as artists and not as doers. It's a different kind of art, but it's art still the same. And so, one guy plays a guitar, another guy plays a mixing console. I think one of the worst things you can do is to maybe unintentionally or ignorantly put a gap between the people on the stage and the people behind the scenes, and sort of a kind of these are the artists. And so like letting, like, one of the things that just makes me cringe, and we have some people that have done this. I don't get in the middle of team dynamics. I let them work their stuff out. But if I sometimes see like a worship leader walk up to JB and be like, "Oh man, I think the mid range is just a little too hot," or whatever, I'm just like, dude, shut up. It's not you're treating people that know really well what they're doing like they're kids, or like, I can do my job and your job too. I'm that good. And I learned that working with Andrew. Of course, it was the first time that I really had worked with, an audio engineer in any real significant capacity. And I learned, like, within the first few times of being around him, that guy knew what he was doing. And he wasn't going to let you, and he would never let me, if I tried, he wouldn't let you just roll up into the booth and tell him, add more reverb on the vocal. It just wasn't going to work that way. But you could approach him if you treated him with respect. And I just kind of carried that into, that's just my mentality with our team, is I just, even if I think, man, the drums are, don't sound great, or something's too hot, I'm never going to roll up to JB, especially during a run through, and say, "Hey, the vocal's too hot, turn it down." Half the time he already knows it. In fact, 95% of the time. They already know it. They're just working on about a million other things at the moment. Just give it some space. And usually the problem takes care of itself. What I do is have a meeting, we'll have a meeting afterwards. And if I need to say in that meeting, hey, man, it just seemed like I couldn't hear this very well or whatever, I just make the comment. I don't prescribe a solution. It's just like, you don't want somebody telling you how to do your job. And if you're competent, halfway competent at what you do. And so, that's how. I don't even know what the original question was. I got side on a rant, but yeah. Anyway, treating them like they're artists. So anyway, how involved should they be? Well, I think they should be involved in the sense that they. Some guys, Andrew would have a bit more of a musical take than JB has, just because Andrew was a very opinionated man and also was a musician himself. And so he would have things to say about, songs and sets and all that kind of stuff. But just to honor the artist, and I'm speaking of JB in this case, it's like he's got a job here to do as well. He may not want or need to pick the songs, but just hearing the intention. Again, if you're good at what you do, mixing is not just turning knobs. There's a soul part of it. That's what makes it come alive. And so to me, context, heart, understanding why something was chosen, I think it's all in the back of someone's mind when they're trying to mix something or create a lighting, cue or whatever it may be. It's like, so that's just, to me, when we work like that, we're treating production people with dignity and respect and treating them as artists, which I think they are.
Yeah, I will say Church on the Move is definitely different in that area. We have some worship guys that come from different churches, and it's a completely different dynamic just because of what Whit's saying. The production guy is just the doer. Hey, my slides aren't up on time. I need them faster. The guitar's not loud enough, and of course that's coming probably from the guitarist. Because everyone's wanting to hear or see the thing that they need, but not understanding, we have 200 inputs that we're trying to make sure everyone's heard and everything's done. That's the beauty of production and worship being not on top of each other, one being over the other, but us working together as a team to accomplish the same goal for a service. They want to sound good. I want them to sound good. And I want my mix to sound good. Well, we're going to work together to get to that point. On Saturdays, we do a run through before our rehearsals, and it's the worship pastor, the music director, and me. And we walk through every song. I give my opinions of, hey, these are the musical elements I would like to change or adjust. They give me some feedback of, hey, we can make some adjustments here and here that'll help carve out some space. It's us working together, but us not being dominant people over each other.
At Church on the Move, is worship and production both like equally under the creative, wing? And do you guys have, I would say, the same level voice where worship and production have, equal power, so to speak, or equal voice? And do you have a philosophical standpoint on that for churches? Or should production be under worship and subservient to that vision?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Jimmy. Go for it.
Yeah, so my role's a little different. I work on the support side, but also with the working alongside worship at our Tulsa location, since I oversee the production side of Tulsa. I work alongside the worship pastor as, hey, we're counterparts in this together under the executive pastor. So it's a little bit different dynamic, but at our other locations as well, they both production and worship work under their executive pastors, working in tandem together to accomplish that same goal. Because in production, it's not just worship that we're serving. Like, we've got Kids on the Move, 180. We've got all these different areas that we're serving in the same capacity as we're serving worship, and our lead pastors at each location. There's just a lot more variety than most people assume.
Yeah, I think just kind of fill in a little bit of context. We're three churches And so when JB says support, there are certain, you could call it shared services that we have between the three churches: accounting, HR, IT, production being one of those. Production has a unique kind of role of being both a shared service amongst, because there's sort of, not every church has its own proprietary production, full-on production team, yet they do have their own production person. And so like, if you think about like budgets and equipment and all that, we want to leverage the universal buying power of the whole of the church, but also have a little bit of independence or autonomy at each of the churches. So it's a balance that we run there, and that makes production have just a kind of unique position. Currently, they are horizontal, like they're peers. Historically, they would have been peers too. When I worked with Andrew and Andy, it was Andy and Andrew, and then I was their direct supervisor. And and so I think both can work. I think there's probably a variety of different models for us. As he says, they report to the executive pastor. So each of our churches has their own local executive pastor whose really job is more kind of the day-to-day operations of that particular church. And so they both report to that guy. And I wouldn't be opposed to one leading the other if it seemed more effective, but this works really. It's a bit much right now for a worship leader because worship doesn't have quite the shared service aspect that production has. And so it would be just a bit of a different leadership challenge to lead both local worship and local production, and then oversee kind of global, or whatever however you want to call it, production as well. So there's not necessarily a philosophy there on how we think that they should run. I will say this is my philosophy, is that wherever they are, however you have them positioned, they should be working at the very least very closely together. And that was a conviction that I came to when I was leading it, is that having this all part of the same team was really, really beneficial. So you don't have to, report to the same person, or one doesn't have to be over the other to accomplish that, as long as we can keep the relational closeness. I think that is a huge benefit in doing this job.
Yeah. Blake, what do you think the chances are that Church Gear can become the fourth church of Church on the Move, so we can tap into some of these support services, and Johnathan could be our production director?
It just depends on how much they care about their average, because we're going to bring a big fat 0, but they're at 300, so I guess we could be 75%.
What if we kidnapped Stephen Aruda and made him part of our team? Would that then qualify us?
Oh, we'd be 120% then. What are you asking these kind of questions for? They're obvious.
Stephen Aruda is already on the team, so you're at 0 still.
Oh, dang it.
Okay, so for either one of you, I'm going to throw you a gigantic philosophical question. Well, the first part might not be, but where do you think perhaps Church on the Move might be going in the next 5-10 years, creatively speaking? And then also, what trends do you see in the American church that you believe might be coming down the pike that could be impacting production leaders in churches?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, they're kind of similarly answered. I think people are hungry for something real. I think there is some kind of return right now to interest in Christianity, particularly the Bible. Jordan Peterson will be in Tulsa on Sunday, and he's going to be speaking at the largest arena that we have about the Bible, and people are going to fill it up to go hear a man lecture for 2 hours about the Bible. That's remarkable when you think about it. So there's some kind of resurging interest in Christianity, and you're seeing it in Western Europe. And but I think people are increasingly or maybe decreasingly less interested in slick Christian productions. I don't think that's a big deal. I think what people are interested in is authenticity. I think they're also interested in something transcendent and bigger than they are. And so, and also I think even connected, like something historic, something that's connected to the past. Because I think we want to be a part of something stable. We live in a world where a lot changes and it's changing really fast. And I think the church offers a unique position in that we have a historic faith and we have a lot of tradition that we can rely on. And so I think and we've done this, so this is, whatever. I'm not judging other churches in this because, like I said, we did it. But like having a guy fly around the room on Easter for some reason is not why people are coming to your church. And so at least I think the majority of people. So for me, it's really what we've done is just going back to the basics of what we do, which is we worship Jesus, we read scripture, we preach a sermon about Christ, and we pray for one another. And then we try to do a really, really good job of caring for the people that are part of our church community. And really, it's not much more complicated than that. And the clearer we've gotten on our view of what the church is, the less, we've been able to, or the more we've been able to say, yeah, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We don't have to, invest in that kind of thing anymore. And what's been fascinating is that our church has been growing at a pretty crazy rate over the last 4 years, particularly. And I mean, you might say, well, that's just kind of like COVID bounce back. Well, I know what was going on at Church on the Move before COVID, and it wasn't this. So it's quite different. And so anyway, I think that is where, in fact, I'm about to go to, not about to, but this summer, I hope to go to London to hear a guy named Andrew Wilson speak on this. He wrote a book called Remaking the World 1776. And it's a fascinating cultural read about kind of a study of culture, how we've gotten where we are and where the world is going. And there is an increasing interest in Christianity, and it's showing up around the world in different ways. And I think the church offering something real and transcendent, not just here's how to fix your marriage. I know people care about their marriage, but they like just being so felt needs based and so kind of consumer driven, I think is just not going to build the church of the future. And I think that's not what's built the church of the past either. I think we had kind of a little bit of a weird aside in the American church where it was like church became a business and we got really trying to see how good we could get at running it. I don't know that, I'm not sure that that's what's going to sustain the church of the future. And so, one of the things I tell our team pretty regularly is like, no one's showing up this weekend surprised they're at a church. Nobody's walking in going, wait a minute, what? Y'all worship Jesus? You're singing songs, or we read the Bible here. I can't believe it. It's like people know what they're coming to. We don't have to apologize for being a church or even doing things that people don't understand. They're showing up for some reason. It's like they're showing up because they know that what they're doing isn't working and they're open to something else. And so I think there's a way you can invite new people into that, but not make the church so attractional that it really starts to lose any semblance of what a historic church has ever been. And so anyway, that's where Church on the Move is heading. And I think that's where culture is heading too.
That's great. I feel Blake, for you specifically, just the need to have context, historical context, because the other day you didn't know who Jimi Hendrix was.
Still don't.
I mean, Whit, can Church on the Move teach people the basics of, at least some of the historical music context in which we live now?
Yeah, there you go. Apparently we need to.
So we like to wrap our episodes with something we call a tech takeaway. And we've kind of specified it a little bit for the series with pastors and their production leaders. Whit, first to you, is there something that you would say you wish all production people understood this about their pastor? One thing you could say, like, this will help you be a better, just at your job of serving your pastor, of understanding this.
That's a tough question. I've not thought about that before. I mean, probably that we're probably far more insecure than maybe you do know. I don't know.
Production people know their pastors so well, even down to their verbal tics. We have found out.
I think you're probably right. No, nothing. I mean, nothing special comes to mind. Actually, yeah. I mean, I'll highlight JB here. I love the attitude, and it's not just the attitude. I think the right way to serve anywhere, this is production or anything, is to think of. It's not just a job at a church. It's always it's a calling, and if you're called somewhere, then there is this tension between your wants and desires and also the faithful obedience that you've been called to. And I lived this. I lived it for years working with my dad, where you have the frustration of working for the person that you're working for, but also the calling that the knowledge that you're called where you're at. And one of I think the ways that we, as Jesus said, lay our lives down, daily take up our cross, is to sometimes crucify our preferences, to crucify our perspectives, to lay even sometimes our dreams down, because this is where God's called me for the present time. And I think JB models that really well. And maybe it's been modeled so well for so long at Church on the Move that I've gotten used to it. And it's probably not, I never have to deal with or think about with any of our team that I'm going to say something and there's going to be a eye roll and a sigh and a whatever. But it's a real authentic desire, whether they agree with me, like my idea or not. They're going to respond with great attitude, because I think, and you heard it in the way he said it, he views this as a calling. And so it's more, and which is the biblical way to approach things. Whatever you do in word or in deed, do it as unto the Lord, man. And I think that could be tough in the production world, but I think I think remembering that reality and that principle is a game changer for just our approach, our attitude.
Jonathan, same question back over to you, man. What's something you wish other pastors out there, or maybe your own, understood about their production team?
Yeah, I've been trying to think of that. Like Whit said, in this, I'm blessed because Whit has been in this area, so it's hard to really take myself out of it and go, what would he really, or what would a lead pastor really care for? But I thought of something. It was the really just the understanding of what we do, and that comes from the production guys, like really giving them the context. There was one of our pastors at one of our locations that I just really gave him the full understanding of what was going on, what he was doing to aggravate his production guy, all the things. And I mean, I thought I just told him a little thing. I didn't think anything of it. Completely changed like his whole perspective on just how things ran, how he viewed everything. Really a life-changing thing that I didn't think I was going to do for him, but just really him understanding that really changed the perspective for his production guy to really get a relationship built back together and for them to keep going. So really, yeah, I would say really listening to your pastor for production guys too is a big thing. And when I say listen, I mean really listen.
What about the concept of a ride along for pastors where the elders give the pastor a few weeks off, and then the pastor rides along with the production people and gets
Good idea.
Live in it for a bit to understand how it actually works behind the scenes.
It would change your life and your perspective. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Blake, maybe I need a ride along with you in, Church Gear brand land to understand what it is you do on a daily basis, because I have no idea what you're doing all day long.
Toby, all your hair would fall out from the horror. This series is, I'm seeing a trend so far, because we've recorded now with Jonathan Whit, we've recorded with Matt Chandler and Wes, and both of their pastors were so heavily involved in production at some point in their lives. They're actually giving us better answers than I hoped in a bad way.
Yeah.
Like they're so understanding.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what that trend shows? If you want to have an awesome church, go hang out with your tech guy.
Yeah.
There you go. So Matt has production background experience.
I think Blake was exaggerating a bit. Matt,
He understood way more than like an average pastor would, though.
yeah, I think
Amazing.
he's, helped set up and tear down before, and just is very involved with Wes and the production team. So yeah,
Awesome.
I think he, understands more than we might think he does.
That's cool.
So to both of you, Whit and George,
Whit and George.
Whit and George, that's your two names, Whit and Jonathan. Is there anything you'd like to plug? And specifically, I'd like to ask Pastor Whit, you're going to be at Philo teaching one of the sessions. Do you want to give us any sort of teaser as to what you're going to be teaching on?
It's currently completely out of my mind right now. I talked about it with Todd a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to have to regurgitate all that back up to think. I think I'm going to do something out of the Sermon on the Mount. There's the passage that I'm kind of drawn to is how Christ talks about doing things not to be seen by men, but to be seen by God. And I think there's something beautiful about the production world that puts you in that place where it really isn't about you. And so I don't know. I'm not sure yet, but that's kind of where my mind's going right now. But I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't been to Philo in a long time, so it should be a lot of fun to catch up with everybody.
And Blake just reminded me behind the scenes that this episode comes out after Philo. So if you missed out on Philo, all of it is available online. So go to philo.org and listen to Whit's teaching on
whatever it was. It was awesome.
It was amazing.
Well, boys, we can't thank you enough for joining us, giving us a bird's eye view into the pastor and tech relationship, and we just thank y'all for joining us in our mission to help pastors and techs get to know each other better through this series.
That's awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Blake, I'm really hoping that the result of this series is that church techs can understand their pastors better, and that there will be just better line of communication and relationship between them.
Yeah, and if, with the Pay series, you couldn't really send that to your pastor, right? That'd be kind of weird.
It depends on how you do it, and we even talked about that on the Pay series, how to do this, respectfully and not passive-aggressively.
But with this one, you're saying, hey, I just want to get to know you better. So send it to your pastor. Be like, hey, listen to this series with me, and at the end of it, we'll go out and have coffee and talk about our takeaways, any ways we can work better together.
And I sent it to my pastor, and all he said was, fire Blake.